Welcome to Opinion Havers, a movie podcast for people who invent calendars. I'm Cody.
And I'm Tyler.
Tyler, what did we watch?
Cody, I'm so glad you asked. And I'm glad we live in a country where you can ask questions like that, all right? And, what do we need to sustain a country like that? We need a strong border. And that's why we're going to build a wall, Cody. And we're going to make Russia pay for it. That's right. It's a wall between Alaska and Russia. Anyway, so to answer your question, Cody, we watched... That's right. It's the hit movie Silence. Did you get it? Did you get what I meant? I went there?
You were quiet when it was time to say silence.
Silence. That's the name of the movie, Silence.
No, you did a great job. Tyler, let me give the synopsis on this one.
How dare you, but okay.
Oh, no, yeah, you can go ahead.
Cody,
you know I'm just teasing you. Come on. Come on.
Cody, don't you dare take this from me. You may look at this poster and you think this is definitely a movie about Rasputin and him taking down the czars of Russia, but no. Of course, it's a movie about Qui-Gon Jinn, Spider-Man, and Kylo Ren and their hilarious adventures in Edo-era Japan. All right, that's what it is, okay?
I can't... I've been thinking about this. When I popped this movie on, because first off, obviously, I did this... First, I put this on the list first off as a joke. Second off, because you asked me to. And third off, I started this guy and I was like, you know what? I can't think of a time where we watched a more serious movie. I was like, there's no comic relief in this film. There's no silly bits. There's one time that was kind of funny when they're like, here's your guide, and just like a drunk dude under the stairs. I was like, that was a little funny. But like aside from that, the movie is serious as a heart attack. And I'm just so glad we're here for it. What we always do, just real serious movies.
Oh, yeah. This is a Martin Scorcese films among Martin Scorsese films. You know what I mean?
If you're watching some Scorsese films, there's like, the fun, happy bit, like in Goodfellas, when they're like, so much fun being a gangster, am I right? Well, look at that. They'll just pop up a table for you in the restaurant. And, there's Wolf of Wall Street where it's like, we're going to go on some crazy boat parties and, we're having a good time before it gets bad. This movie, it starts off with someone being like, hey, this is a bad idea, but I'll let you do it. And then the whole movie's like, anyway, this is why it was a bad idea.
Can I tell you my favorite of all these? And I feel like, Scorsese is such a genius. To have everybody just speak in their accent, whatever their normal speaking accent is, but insist and repeat multiple times that they're all speaking Portuguese and really make sure you understand that. No. Let me tell you, Cody, I live in an area with a lot of these Portuguese, all right? And you're going to think, Tyler, you fool, they're Brazilians. I'm going to say, how dare you, sir? We got them both. And you think, they can both speak Portuguese. And it's kind of like, yes, but no. All right? You know what I mean? It's different. Yeah. It's
kind of like if you put me in a room with the Artful Dodger and tried to tell someone we were both speaking English.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, not really.
You put two people speaking heavily slanged American versus British English. We don't know what we're talking about. We don't understand a word the other person is saying.
You take a guy from like the deep heart of, Alabama or something, and it's like, hey, I need you to have a conversation with this guy, and he's got just like a thick Cockney accent. It's not gonna, it's not gonna go anywhere.
And here's the thing, Cody. A lot of people, they're gonna come out here and say, "Why you always say British? Why don't we ever show the Australians love?" And here's what I'll say: Australians are the better version of the British. Okay, they are. You can understand what they're saying by the way they say it, but the British, who knows what they're talking about, right? They're like, oh, that's
Well,
a
I
bit of a fig's
mean,
uncle, isn't it? Isn't it? And you're like, what? I don't understand what you're talking
well,
about
I
right now.
mean, Australia is just the Wild West of England. They were all. It's too small. They needed a Wild West, so they're like, what about Australia? We'll make that our Wild West. And I love a good Western.
Here's the thing. Australia, it was just a prison,
Yeah,
and we all know the coolest people, they go to prison. So
yeah.
it stands to reason they
I mean,
sent all.
not only is it a prison for people, and they abandoned that idea, they decided to build a wall to make it a prison for dingoes. They were like, you know
Exactly.
what? These stupid dingoes are out here ruining our ideas about bringing in in non-indigenous species. Let's build a wall for them. Who
Right.
else out here is building a wall for native animals not to cross?
Me.
The hubris of
Keep
these people.
I'm out here trying to keep these
I
animals from
mean,
crossing that Bering Sea land bridge again. You don't know when that
that
thing's
would
going
be
to
like
pop
if I
up.
made a little fort in my neighborhood and was like, all right, we're putting all the squirrels in there. It's like, nope, leave the squirrels alone. They're doing fine. This is their home.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Here's the thing, Cody.
Anyway,
No. Let me tell you about this. Okay. See, the British, what they did, right, is they came in and they were like, all right, prisoners, guess what? You can get out if you go to America and make America great again, right? And then we took America. We are like, hey, Brits, suck it. And it's ours now. All right. And then Canada was like, hey, can we please have our country? And they were like, all right, you know? And so, but I guess before, I
but
don't
then the
know.
French in Canada were like,
We're like,
hold on, we still want to speak French. And the rest of Canada was like, oh, you're making this unnecessarily difficult for the rest of us, but fine.
French Canadians, when will you understand that France will never love you the
Are
way that,
there other countries that were are just like have a whole, I mean,
I
that would.
mean, we
Are there other
talked about,
countries that have just like one of their 5 states is like, nah, we're French, like we're doing a
yeah.
different language over here. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
We'll be part of your country, but I still want to identify as French.
I mean,
Meanwhile, France is like, we did not sanction this, and we don't think we got nothing to do with you.
here's a question for you, my good sir. Have you ever been to Louisiana? Some could
Oh,
argue.
oh, I've been there.
Some could argue the U.S. has that a little bit.
Oh, I mean,
And you want to
okay.
say, oh, no,
You're gonna compare the Cajuns to the French Canadians? I'll tell you. Let me spit some gospel at you, because I've been to both places, sir. You done crossed the wrong picket line. I've been to
no,
Montreal. I've been to New Orleans. I've been to both, dude.
no, Narlands.
Here's what I love about Cajuns. They're like, what if we took French words and that's it?
Yeah,
What if we just called stuff French that isn't French? They're like, that sounds like a really cool thing
that's
to
the
do,
thing. I was gonna say is like, you know what? The only thing that the French hate more than the Quebecois,
French Canadians.
how dare
Yeah,
you,
huh?
sir, is the Creoles, the Cajun people. They're like, you took our language and just made it, just didn't even try to do it right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Then they did the same thing with Australia, right? They're like, you guys go there and you're prisoners. And I feel like that's why, I feel like Australia, we should just team up and invade England. Let's take them over. Let's enslave England. Everybody's out here, race riots, there's all this stuff, and all that. I feel like we can all join together if we just enslave all the white British people.
I'm not saying it's a good idea, but here's what you're forgetting about Australia. Number one, they've got great nationalized healthcare. Number two, people mostly just live on the beach, like on the coasts of Australia.
That's why they're all
you got all these
hot.
white people with healthcare and beaches, and I think they don't even. They're like, do you want to go invade stormy old England? They're like, no, not really.
But then
I
we
like it better
take the
down
English
here.
people and we have them build a bigger dingo wall. And I
What if we
said,
took all the white people out of England and
Yeah.
we just let all the EU immigrants take over? And like, you know what? The best thing about England is like the curry. So India, we're decolonizing you and we're giving you
Oh, that's a
England.
good
You know what
point.
I'm
Let's
saying?
get India involved. They would probably like some extra room. You know, they would be all
I
about
mean,
it.
how many people are there in India, and you're really going to tell me the Brits are going to be able to fight all them off?
I mean, they couldn't. That's why. I mean, they've tried. They tried real hard for a
I
long
mean,
time.
England's had it too good for too long. Look, I know that
I
they had
said,
to deal, Scotland and England and Wales and the Romans and blah, 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 right? They've been invaded, but also it feels like it's been too long, you know?
and I want to retract something I said earlier. I said the British, that includes the Scots and the Irish, and I just want to restate that as let's just do the English. Let's just
The
enslave
English,
the
yeah.
English, the white English
Yeah,
people. Let's get them. You know,
I agree.
I feel like
Well,
nothing bad has ever
Tyler-
happened to them in their history. We got to get them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what about this? What's your hot take on the movie?
I thought I liked it. I got some real not World War Z,
Yes.
Lost City of Zed vibes, which I was like, ooh, Cody hates this movie.
Oh, all right. I didn't even think about Lost City of Zed. Okay, dude. Oh, man. Okay, I gotta... Hold on. Let's pause the podcast so I can rewrite my whole thesis on this, because I got thoughts on Lost City of Zed, dude.
Didn't we do that
well, look,
movie?
No, I watched it, though. Ooh,
Oof.
I watched it and had the highest of hopes. Anyway.
And I liked it.
And it was...
I loved it. I loved
It was
every
all
minute
right.
of it. It was so good.
It was all right. I'll tell you, I do like this movie. It's a tough one. It's a long one. And here's what I like about it. There's a lot to talk about with this movie, and I've got to talk to no one about it, because did you know nobody's seen this movie? I know 2 people that have seen this movie. You are now the third. So I know 3 people that have seen this movie. It's been out for 8 years. It's by perhaps the most famous working director in Hollywood, and I know 3 people that have seen it. So,
I mean, I've wanted to
I'm
see
going
it
to be able to get
for
a
long
lot
time.
off my chest. A whole lot. So,
Do you want to just, Cody?
Yeah.
So does that mean?
Yeah.
Do you want to just
Yes.
hop on my mud cart and just go into the mud fields of? There's a lot of mud, is what I'm saying, Cody, and it's deep mud. The mud fields of Spoiler Town.
Hop on my mud cart. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here for it. Tyler, are you feeling bold, or you want?
You seem like you
first?
got like you're looking down at notes. You seem
Tyler,
rearing to go.
No, I'm looking down at the game, but I've had notes burning in my skull for 7 years since I first saw this movie. So I mean, I can go first, but I don't have to by any means, you know?
I mean, I've been going first a lot. I mean, I can go first. Don't get me wrong.
right.
I just finished the movie not too long.
Tyler, no. I can do this and watch the game at the same time.
It's not like the more of the game is going to be over if you wait.
Dude. They're about a blow this. They already threw an interception. They're done. These boys are toasted. To keep this evergreen, don't worry. I won't say who's playing, but I will say they're about to lose, and you won't be surprised. Here I go. Tyler, silent. I mean, I was watching this and I was like, how are we going to make a podcast about this? This movie, I mean, there's very little to poke fun at. This thing is dork. It gets dork fast. It starts dork and it stays dork. And, but it's fine. Here's something interesting. Did you know this movie was the only non-Best Picture nominee to be nominated for Best Cinematography that year? That's interesting. That was the only thing it was nominated for. But, it was a pretty good movie, The scenery, just fantastic. Whoever scouted out these locations, which I think is actually in Thailand, I think. Anyway, they did a great job. It was beautiful. It's just some beautiful scenery. Just some beautiful mountains for dirty people to hide in holes in. So, I mean, kind of a waste, right? A little bit of a waste, but it's fine. Yeah, this movie is fascinating. Here's what's interesting about it. It's a faith-based movie. It's Martin Scorsese's third faith-based movie. Gosh, it's hard. He did Temptation of Christ. He did, I forget the name of it, but it's about the Dalai Lama. And then he did this one. So I can't think of another Hollywood director that's out here making spiritual movies or like church movie. Normally you get a church movie and it's like Darla's ring, and it's about Darla and her promise ring and why her saying no to, premarital sex saved her life, and it's like, it's fine. It's whatever, Fireproof, those kind of movies. They're not good, but they're good enough that, like, people that are really religious are like, have you seen this? The best movie ever made? They talk about Jesus in it, which is why it's the best movie ever made. Anyway, so this one, it's about Jesus, but, like, I don't know. It's a Hollywood movie that's faith-based, and it's got Jedis in it. I mean, they're not Jedis in the movie, but they're people that play Jedis, so it's just fascinating. And what I love about this movie is the theology of it. It is a fascinating study of, like, faith. Also, it's like, it's not a true story, but it's absolutely grounded in true history, so that's really fascinating about it. And, there's a lot to learn from it. I think the big lesson is, if you like religion, don't like it so much that you persecute people, because that's bad, If you're going to do a crusade or do a genocide or a persecution of another religious group, then think twice, you're doing a bad job, If you want to be a good person, don't be a bad person. That's what I have to say. So anyway, I like the movie, but it's hard to watch. It is it's probably the longest movie I've ever seen. And it's Martin Scorcese, right? He's made longer movies, but this movie, because it's grueling. It's brutal, it's slow, and it's long. And all those things combined make it feel longer than it is, It is weird that they're Portuguese and they make a big deal about it. Because they also could have just rewrote it a bit and been like, hey, they're English or they're whatever. And it's fine. But also, like, Benicio del Toro was supposed to be in this originally, and then he wasn't. Because this movie took, like, 30 years to make. Because, obviously, nobody wants to make this, and it's hard to make. So, yeah. But he made it. Marty, he did it. Not only did he make it, he screened it at the Vatican. So, he premiered it to a bunch of priests, And it's interesting. The Jesuit priests are fascinating. Because they're like super priests, They're like scholar priest dudes. Really interesting guys. They invented the modern calendar, which is great. And so that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just... And, like, I'll spill some beans here. Something you guys already knew. But I was a missionary for 2 years. So, like, yeah, it's interesting to see a movie about missionaries, but also missionaries that go somewhere where they are very much not welcome and also are breaking the law to be there and also get tortured and persecuted because they're there. So, really interesting. Oh, so depressing. Here's the thing. I saw this with my friend Jeff. Shout out Jeff. Jeff and I made short films in high school, and he was in town when this movie came out. I don't know why this movie is playing in my hometown. These movies never play in my hometown, so he saw it. It's kind of interesting because I feel like his take was kind of like, oh yeah, it's like saying being religious is bad kind of thing, or like it's saying having faith is bad. So as a religious person, I'm like, I don't think that's how I read the movie, but like the movie goes so back and forth about it, and you see so many ugly parts of religion. That's what's kind of interesting. I have a great quote about it I'll share later, but yeah, Marty, what a weird dude, People snorted cocaines out of people's butts in the movie he made before.
All right, Cody, we're gonna need to cut you off there. All right, you went over the line. All right,
I was just getting to the good stuff.
No.
How do you make that and then this? That's what I want.
Well, he was gonna make this after Gangs of New York, just to give you a little tease of the.
Yeah, there's a lot of debauchery in that one too.
Oh well.
Also, Liam Neeson's in that one too.
You know what? We could have had Daniel Day-Lewis, but anyway, Cody, I'm gonna need you to shush. I'm gonna get into it. Okay.
Don't read the trivia while I did my
reading
game.
The trivia.
I already read all the trivia.
Don't read it. I'm doing that. All right, now you shush.
I read it while
now.
I watched this movie for the second time. They lost the game, by the way.
Oh, no shush. I've got my finger and my cursor on your lips. Just shush it. So gentle. All right, Cody, here we go. So here's the thing, okay? Here's what I thought this movie, as I was about, a full movie into this movie. So about halfway through, I thought, ooh, this has got some potential to get racist real fast. That's all I could think about. I was like, oh, are we going to do this? But here we go, Cody. Let's talk about it. They're Japanese, Cody. It's messed up. All right. Here's the thing, Cody. This is like right when they were getting real, they're getting real isolationist. Fun fact, I just like read a bunch of, like, right before we decided to do this movie, or right before The Device spat this movie out, I actually watched like a whole documentary and read a bunch of articles and stuff about this era of Japan, just because it came up and I was like, oh, that seems interesting about them going hyper isolationist. Fun fact, this is seen as a very like positive time by some people, because they're super isolationist and they focused on art and culture and torturing white people, and people that didn't. Here's the thing. All right, let's sit here. Let's talk about, Cody. Put your feet up, lean back. Let's talk about Buddhism. All right. When your religion is based on a guy that specifically was like, don't worship me, and you worship him, I feel like I have to say, not to call out an entire major religion, but that's weird, right? Now, I understand a lot of people, they would say, well, we don't worship Buddha, we worship the ideas of Buddha. But you have giant statues of the Buddha, which I believe is the proper way to refer to the Buddha. And I understand the aspirational one. I understand the tenets of Buddha, get to the, become like him. He was a man, he became the Buddha. You can do that too if you try and you do your stuff and all that. But it wasn't one of the things that you're specifically not supposed to make things of him. But, everyone does. Anyway, it's weird. It's all I'm saying. Here's the thing about this, Cody. It drove me nuts. First off, we got a skinny Kylo Ren. Let's talk about the big boy we got in the Star Wars movies. Skinny boy in this movie. Half of those trivia facts, look me in the eyes and tell me if I'm wrong. Half of them were saying how many pounds each of the actors lost to be in this freaking movie. I think Martin Scorcese, he's just starving his actors. I think Martin Scorsese, he's just a serial killer, all right? And he kidnaps and starves people. And if you survive his crazy dungeon, you get to be in a movie by him, all right? Here's my thing. All right, they played around with it a lot. The will they, won't they, right? With the Liam Neeson, with the Qui-Gon Jinn. Will they, won't they? Is he? But I feel like when he pops up, spoilers, he betrayed them. All right, he betrayed the Jedi Order. Okay, and I feel like when he came in, they were just like, yeah, no, it was never in question. But I'm like, but I feel like you set it up like, oh my, did he go? And did he betray the faith or did he not? What is he still alive? Did he die? You made it like this whole ambiguous thing. And then you tried to be like, idiot, he's been alive the whole time. And I say, no, Martin, you're an idiot. Fight me, Scorsese. I will fist fight you in a parking lot tonight. All right. That's what I'm saying to you right now. Okay. Here's the thing. These Jesuits, all right, we always hear about the Jesuits. The Jesuits, here's why they're not as cool as the other monks and priests, right? Because they never brewed beer, okay? And I can't trust an order of monk priests dudes that didn't brew beer, okay? Also, it's like, oh, they're Portuguese. I think it's fine, right? Because that was the big deal, right? That's, I think, where a lot of the people that went there for, because, Japan, they had very limited trading partners. And I was like, I feel like it's a very Martin Scorsese thing, right? To say like, oh yeah, everybody is this thing. They're all speaking this language, but they're all speaking English in an English accent. Or an American accent. So who cares? But they're all speaking Portuguese, get over it. You want to read subtitles the whole time? No, you don't. What do you think this is? Europe? Get over yourself. All right. And so I didn't mind it. It made sense in the history, but I'm like, here's what I thought the whole time. I was like, Martin, I feel like this is going over people's heads, which isn't that whole Martin Scorsese's whole thing. It's like his movies. It's like everybody pretends to understand them because they'd be smart, but then no one understands them.
Oh, Tyler, I'm gonna have to cut you off right there. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, yeah, I don't know. He's fascinating. I was looking through his filmography. Scorsese is all over. I mean, it is so weird that he's made these like faith-based movies. Now, really strange.
Here's one thing.
Yeah.
I felt like this movie. I feel like you could argue that this movie, the way that it's told, the story is told isn't even necessarily like a faith base. It almost tries to frame it in more of like a philosophical, like a different philosophies, right? Because that's the argument of them. Here's the thing with the Japanese. Japanese, you know what you did. You know what you did 400 years ago. Okay, you came into that room and you argued philosophy when you're torturing people to death. The Japanese, here's what I want to know. Japan, come closer, okay? Come in here. Come closer. I know we're going to have at least one person from Japan stumble upon this, get 5 seconds in, bump off. But maybe they'll get this far. Maybe they'll understand English. I want to know. Why? Why not, some people be like, why are you so evil or whatever back in the day? And I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you go so hard on everything? Like, let's examine Japan. When they go bad guy, they're so bad guy. The Yakuza is one of the scariest international criminal organizations in the world. All of Japanese culture is, it's like they look whatever they're going to do and they dial it up to 50 and snap the knob off and then throw the knob at you.
Well, it's also true of like the artisans in Japan too, where it's like, you want me to collect sea salt? I'm going to make it an art. And I'm, you're like, hold on. This is, and soy sauce and like, I don't know. There's like all such like artisans there, like the food wise, but also like architecture wise and art wise. You're like, you guys,
do you need remember
a hobby? I don't know.
Do you remember
how this like trade of yours is your whole life? But it is insane how good you are at it.
Do you remember when it came out that it was a big hobby in Japan to do the soup, to make the tinfoil balls and polish them to like?
Oh no!
Do you know about this?
I've seen it. I've seen the picture of people turning it into a thing. I didn't know it was like a.
It started out as in Japan, and it was just like a thing because I think it's because if you think about it, it's an incredibly cheap hobby that you get a lot of hours out of. Right, it doesn't take a lot of space, and it is very hand artisan type thing, right? Because you're doing this thing with your hands, and I just thought it's so weird. And then the rest of America was like, Tyler, you're an idiot. This is awesome. And I was like, I know it is, but I'm not going to do it. That takes forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they go hard in the paint, and I really, it's great when it's not war.
Look, I don't think they're going to go hard on war again. I feel like getting 2 nukes dropped on you really takes the fight out of a country for the rest of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that.
Cody, I don't know if you've seen these movements online, but there's some stuff kicking off in other parts of the country, and everybody's like, look, I have the solution. Let's nuke Japan again. And I'm like, look, it has solved the issues in the past, but look at them. They're so adorable. You can't do it to them, all right?
Yeah. I hear you. I mean, we could try it. So I got so many notes, Tyler.
No,
Let's
you
talk
don't.
About this.
Are any of them about nuking Japan again? Because I just want to say,
no,
it's an option, but I feel like it's a bad option.
To do it, okay. Then let's not. Let's agree not to. Let's make a pinky promise that you and me, we're not going to drop any nukes on Japan.
And we'll give them Japan as a sign that we will never nuke you again. We will give you pachinko parlors. Much like God gave the rainbow to promise he would never flood Earth, we give you pachinko parlors as our promise.
Tyler, let's talk about this movie.
Okay.
Here's the fun bits I can get to. First off, the Inquisitor. This man, straight out of a cartoon. This man walked out of a cartoon and into a Scorsese film, and Martin Scorsese looked him in the face and said, "This is the man who will portray my villain." And it's one of those things where he's such an atrocious person, it's fine and it works, but also, what? He's got a silly voice. He's a villain with a silly voice, and there's no way around it. Because they start the movie with people being tortured, you can't laugh, but he does have a silly voice. Furthermore, I mean, flies hate this guy. Well, technically they love him. No one else in this movie is having a problem with flies, and then he's out here like, I have a fan for beating off flies and hitting people when they try to help me up, and that's what he uses it for. So, I mean, explain that to me.
The guy's, I think, a well-known Japanese actor, and I feel like here's the thing. I feel like there's a certain. I'm not gonna say it's like a character. It's a certain age. I almost feel like of Japanese actors where they all sound like that, and it's like it sounds racist, but it's how you sound. So am I racist? Are we racist for thinking it's racist that he is such a caricature? But then does that make are the caricatures not racist if they're based on those guys?
Well, let's talk about this because he's the only one. There's a bunch of other dudes in this movie, and
but
no
you
one's doing this.
Give me the classic. I mean, that one guy. Who's the guy that plays his little henchman? His little translator.
The translator guy.
Oh, he's. I mean, he's what? Name a movie with Japanese people that's made by an American that doesn't have this guy in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talk about this man. Just sexy voice. That's what he's. That's what he has. I feel like that in Japanese actors, it's either the deep, sexy voice, or you're a cartoon character with abnormally thin teeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is there an in between, or is there just not an in between that makes it over here?
I blame anime. Anime's ruined dramatic performances for Japanese actors. I mean, that's not true, but I've seen some great Japanese movies. First Love is a good one. That's a good one. So I don't know, man.
Adam Driver.
It's all anime and soap opera over there, and J-pop, and that's just how it is now,
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Actually, here's the thing. All right, I need you to do something for me. Okay, I am going to text my wife, and I would like you to text your wife.
No.
Ask her, is Adam Driver attractive?
Oh, we just had this conversation last night. Yes, because of Kylo Ren. I think if he never was Kylo Ren, he wouldn't be hot. But he wears those high pants and the big pecs, and it won everyone over. So I can tell you without asking, yes, he is.
Now, let me ask you, Cody.
Yeah. He's a flip-flopper is what's hard. Like, he's got his moments, but also not.
Yeah. I love his Marine picture. He looks like a freaking goblin. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
Here's the thing. As a man, as a straight man appreciating the beauty of another man, I got to go for the emotions of it all, I'm not out here like these women thirsting after his looks. And he just seems like a good guy.
Oh, we had this look. We're just having the same conversation Ben and I had last night. But as a dude, seems like a great dude. And like I would love to hit it. But,
I'd build a life with that man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Would you build a life with Andrew Garfield?
I mean, he also seems like a good dude, but he also I
feel like he'd be disappointed in me a lot. I don't know why. I just feel like I'd get
it's the Britishness, you know?
I don't like that he's British.
I feel I can be myself around.
He's not American, British, but he is British.
Andrew Garfield?
He's born in L.A. His dad's American. His mom's British, but he's British.
That makes him British, though.
But
if one of your parents is British, then you were British, and like it just is.
But like, I feel like, if I just walked up behind him and I said, "Hey, man," and he would whip around and be like, "Hey, man," and he would just not have an accent, and I'd be like, "Are you Andrew Garfield?" And he'd be like, "Oh, yes, I'm Andrew Garfield," and he'd switch on a bad British accent. I'd be like, "I know, I got you, fool. You don't have an accent. It's fake." You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I got you. I did want to say that translator dude gave a great performance.
Oh, he's a treasure. I like it.
I mean, to contrast silly voice man with serious voice man, and like their different techniques of like messing with Andrew Garfield, I was like, yeah, these guys, it was a good 1-2 punch. But I thought the translator guy was like carrying those scenes. He was doing a great job.
I have expected it to be like him. It'd be like, oh no, cartoon guy is not actually the guy. You know, he's
Mm,
not actually the Inquisitor. It is the interpreter is the
translator.
Inquisitor,
Mm,
and it's just this guy's just kind of there to be like, you know, like really go the whole like fake Ra's al Ghul and Batman kind of thing,
right.
which
The Liam
also
Neeson route.
features Liam Neeson. That fun?
Yeah.
It's a shared
It's very
universe,
fun.
really.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. This movie's got a lot of torture in it, which is great.
It's my favorite part.
Um, it goes hard, and I think, yeah, I don't know. I think the characters are very interesting, right? They choose to go try to like help the church out to find their old friend. It doesn't take too long for them to kind of get found out, and they're like, hey, these people are going to come question us, and like the people are looking to them for answers. I thought it was like right away you kind of see Adam Driver's getting kind of hopeless, and frustrated. Andrew Garfield's kind of the rock for a little bit. But then when the people come out and they're like, hey, they're going to ask us to like trample on Jesus, this image of Jesus. And is it okay? And Andrew Garfield's like, look, if it's okay, like you can do it. And Adam Driver's like, what are you talking about? Don't do it. Like whatever you do, don't do it. And like their paths diverge because they they have to go their separate ways. And then Andrew Garfield like deals with that question the rest of the movie, like, is it okay to do it to save your life? Is it okay to do it ever? And it takes a long time for him to like succumb. But let me ask you this.
Yes.
There's a part in the movie right before he gets snatched by the
Mm-hmm.
Inquisitor where he's looking in the water, and then he sees Christ's reflection in the water, and then he laughs, and then he gets caught. And then right before he decides to trample on Jesus, he hears his voice speaking to him and says like, hey, it's okay, like this is, anyway, he tells him it's okay. Do you believe he was having like a true religious experience, or was he having some sort of like an hallucination?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. You know, being me and the type of person I am, right? Like, if this was like a real account, right, I would be like, oh, I feel like that's a religious experience. But I have a theory about this movie that's gonna blow your mind wide open, and it's gonna make the
All right.
movie a million times better.
Okay.
So, Weasel Man, I
Ooh.
don't think he reappeared. He fell down, he hit his
Kichiro?
head, and then he hallucinated him the rest of the movie.
Kichiro.
Kichiro.
Interesting. But the Dutch guy at the end talks about Kichiro
Uh huh.
in his account.
Yeah. He talks about a servant named Kichiro, which guy could have had a different
Hmm.
servant and just like,
Yeah.
but I was like, how many times?
That's interesting.
But I think at least some of the times
Yeah,
that
he
he was
does hit his
there.
head immediately, and then he bumps into Kichiro, and the
Yeah.
Kichiro keeps following him everywhere he goes,
Yeah. And that's
showing
when
up
he
at
starts
prison, and then
seeing, like, he sees the reflection and he starts hearing the voice in his head more often. And so,
Mhm.
like, that's kind of what I thought. And it's like maybe Kichiro sometimes is there for real, but I thought that it came across as how much of this is actually happening. I thought that a few times, which I think if I was directing the movie, Martin, let me give you some advice. I probably wouldn't. I would have said, you know what, we're going to diverge from the source material here a little bit,
Hmm.
and I'm going to remove that reference that solidifies Kichiro in some way being a real character at the end, because he was real in the
Yeah.
beginning, but him reappearing.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. Well, part of the reason I ask is when I saw it with my friend who isn't religious, he was like, "Oh yeah," and then he hallucinates. So I was like, "Oh, I didn't take it that way." But as a religious person, like I'm prone to be like, right, like miracles can happen, right? And so for me, it was like a moment for him to get like some reassurance or strength. But he does, right? He does like laugh and have kind of a weird, reaction to it. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, and the movie does kind of pit, right, Catholicism versus Buddhism, just because of like the nature of the shoguns at the time who like mandated that line be drawn, you know?
Yeah. And on such a weird basis and such a, such an aggressive response to it. If you just look back at, like what their reasonings for it was. And in reality, the reasonings for it was they were concerned about foreign influence. They were concerned that, things like foreign trade and Christianity and all that would erode their control over their people. And so that's why they shut it down. So it really had nothing to do with, I think kind of like today, the majority religion in Japan is no religion. It's atheists or like agnostic, right? It's like nothing, that's like 67% of people in Japan.
And I've heard a lot of people too that have served in some of those countries that are like, right. And people who are Christian kind of like say it to be cool, but it's kind of, they're very much like, oh yeah, I'm Christian. And that's kind of the end of it, where it's like, right. Don't have a lot of teaching or a lot of like, don't really go to church, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like when I looked it up, the religions, it's 1 point something million Christians in Japan. And like our church is listed on there as like one of the major, and it's got 130,000 active members. And it's like, okay, so it's probably mostly, like it is in the States, like mostly Catholics that go to church maybe once a year.
Yeah.
But like, it's so interesting, right? That like their concern was the philosophy, right? Because that's what so many Eastern religions are. They're not really religions. Like if you look at most of them, it's not really a religion. It's a philosophical like teaching set, but it's treated like a religion because it does the same stuff a religion does. So it's the same thing essentially, but it's not like I don't think if you in a certain sense, like Buddhism and Taoism and all that, I don't think have a God that you pray to. It's just like a set of morals that you live by and a set of right.
There's a lot like Shinto, I think, which is
that's the other one,
is very nature based, which they talk about a lot in when Liam Neeson enters the picture. He's like, hey, when they're talking about the Son of God, like there's no word for this. It's the same as the word for the sun, like in the sky. And it's interesting. Yeah,
which I thought that was an interesting thing, right? Because he was like in the same thing where he was like, oh, finding our base nature in them. He's like, oh, it's like almost like finding God. But in the same breath that he's like, oh, they're too, it's almost like in the same sentence, he was like, they're too primitive to understand our religion, but also they're so much more advanced than us that they can't understand our primitive religion. And I feel like that in and of itself is a very European Western mindset of Eastern peoples and native peoples of, oh, you're too stupid to understand this. So it's not even worth it, which Cody, let me tell you, I was just on this, Tiffany. We watched Moana. Let me tell you about this movie. All right. Not really about the movie, but these people, these historians, if you ever think historians, they know what they're talking about. They looked at like the Hawaiians and the Tongans, and they're like, these people can't make things that can go on the ocean. Let me say it again. They looked at the Hawaiians and said, these people can't navigate the ocean. And I say to you, we trust these people. We trust these people to know what they're talking about. We trust Liam Neeson to protect us, to find us when we're taken, to control the wolf population, and to inform us on native seafaring capabilities. And I just don't think I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I hear it. Well, yeah, that's the thing too, is like, well, that's what's so frustrating about like watching a torture movie. But like, you have these shoguns that are like, yeah, no, this gospel doesn't work here, It just doesn't, you got a tree someplace, but somewhere else might not do good, But at the same time, right, and Garfield's like, the church was doing great before you guys outlawed it and persecuted all these people, and Even like Liam Neeson's like, yeah, they can't comprehend it, you know. Anyway, I'm writing a takedown book, and you're like, stop, hold on. If the religion doesn't work, then it doesn't work. You can't go out here and say, anyway, I slandered it all, and now it's bad. You're like, well, what? Which is it? Is it bad, or do you have to, take it down? And like, I don't know. So that was interesting, but I like, some of the allegories are interesting, like as a Jesuit priest, Andrew Garfield's like, we asked for like trials or sacrifice. We asked to have experiences to prove our faith, like you had, like Christ had, and he is sold for silver right before he's taken. Like he sees Christ's face in his own reflection, is literally sold for the price of silver, and then is taken away to be tormented. So that is interesting, right? That he does have to undergo and watch people undergo like crucifixion-like punishments,
Yeah, I mean, which all that is like they did that stuff for a reason, right? It was very like, I mean, it was it very much like, a modern day kind of psychological warfare thing.
Right. And that's the other thing is like, if this is the lengths you got to go through to get people to stop going to your church, then like, I don't know, just ship the people somewhere else. I don't know. It's just like, is there a more humane way to go about this? This is so brutal.
I mean,
it's just awful to watch.
Look, you can ask anybody in Asia, like, are the Japanese nice people? Most of them, I feel like, unless they're Japanese, will say no. Yeah. They're not like the Americans, which are very nice. Cody, I don't know if you knew this. Part of what I looked up was how this period of Japan ended. You want to hazard a guess of what happened to end this period in Japan?
World War II?
No, sir. So here's what happened, Cody. Let me. So here's what happened. An American captain, or like a admiral or something, was like, I'm going to make Japan trade with us. Took an American fleet, went over there, met with them, and was like, hey, I'm so happy that we're going to be trading from now on. And then like signaled the ships and had them like fire several barrages in celebration, like right next to Tokyo or whatever the capital was at the time.
Yeah.
And then he's like, right? We're going to be trading partners now, right? Aren't you so excited? Fire another barrage. And that's how it happened. And then their whole government collapsed. And I was like, wow, but it lasted for a long time. But it is funny to think like they were, you can look at them as like, man, why are you so brutal? But the second they like were like, all right, fine, we'll meet with you. They were like, all right, cool. So you're going to let us in all the way or we'll kill all of you, Yeah. So like to some extent you're like, well, maybe you were onto something with your super aggressive isolationist stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's effective.
But maybe
it was effective. I'll give them that.
Maybe hanging people upside down with a little slit in their neck so they don't die from the blood rush in their head is a little brutal.
It's so funny because when they hung myself down, I was like, wouldn't you die in like 15 minutes from being like hung upside down like that?
Listen.
And then he's like, anyway, they put a little slice in your neck so you don't bleed out too fast. I was like, well, this is crazy. Not bleed out, but so you lose enough blood that it doesn't. I was like, this is insane. This is crazy. What are we doing here?
Look, they're creative people, okay?
It's wild. I mean, they're pouring hot water on people. They tie people up in rugs, rug mats, so they can be drowned easily. Like, what is this? Whatever. And you know what's crazy about the whole thing is they also decapitate someone with a big old samurai sword. So it's like, isn't this an easier way to do all? You guys are going through so much work to kill these people, but you just showed us how you could just do that. I get it. It's about the psychological warfare and the torture, and you gotta show the people you get punished for doing the thing you don't want them to do. But also, it's so much effort. Why are you putting all your effort into this? Don't you have better stuff to do?
Nah. I mean, what else are they gonna do?
I don't know.
I do think
is Nintendo not around yet.
They almost soon,
almost.
But
once Nintendo came into the picture, it was a feudal Japan was
they were done.
I don't know. I mean, the philosophy and religious message of the movie is just fascinating. I think there's a really interesting quote. So I skimmed through a quick like Vulture article from Hunter Harris about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting. So he says the movie is hard for religious people because it subverts some of the genres. This is actually a Martin Scorsese quote, but it's from this guy's article. Martin explains, he's talking with Scorsese. And it's hard for non-religious people because it demands that you see everyone's faith with complexity. This isn't the fake spirituality of if you believe in God, everything turns out great. This movie says you can believe in God, but bad things might still happen. And then it asks, what do you do with that faith? So I thought, yeah, it doesn't give anyone like an easy answer, an easy break to it. But it shows like some very faithful people going through terrible times, but like, do they ever truly let go of their faith? And that's what I think is kind of interesting, like, because Andrew Garfield does give it up, right? And he does it because he hears the voice of Jesus Christ telling him that this is his path and what needs to happen. But then later, right, he says, I forget exactly when in the movie he says this, but he's like, your silence, like, it wasn't silent at all, your voice. And like, looking back, he's like, no, like, he's like, even if I had never believed, I still would have seen, like, I would have had faith through everything in the world, which I thought was interesting, right? Because there are some scriptures in our faith that talk about like all things testify of Christ, like you can see God anywhere. So I thought that was interesting that he talks about that. And there's this long period where he has given up Christianity and is there as a consultant to, check imports for Christian symbols and does all this stuff. And like, there's a point where Kichiro, who it may or may not be real, is like, hey, I need to confess. Because every time Kichiro denies the faith, he wants to come back and say, hey, I want to make amends and I want to be forgiven, Yeah. And so there's another version of this movie in the 70s, which I guess didn't have the same ending in the book. And I think this one, it's mentioned it was a little closer to the book, but I think Martin Scorsese might have taken the liberty of adding, like, right, that at the very end during the cremation, he has the little cross that he was given by some of the villagers at the start of the movie. Yeah. So it's and there's some other like things, right, where like he's talking to Liam Neeson and he's like, what does he say? Our Lord, something, and he's like, hey, you said our Lord, and he's like, I'm sure it was a mistake, right? And he walks away
and he vanishes because he died in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked those moments because I think, there was, even though there was Liam Neeson's character there to try to, be like, hey, just betray everything you've dedicated your life to and slander it. But then there were like moments where, you could see like he's been sitting there like doing that job before Spider-Man came along. And he misses like one, and he gives him like a look, and everybody kind of looks at him like, what are you doing? Why did you miss that? And I thought that I did a good job of like planting the seed of like, oh, like, has he kind of silently been like every like 1 in like 10 things I'm just going to let through, like the stuff that's pretty well hidden, but I know it's Christian, I'm going to let it through. Whereas you get Andrew Garfield where he's like, oh no, that's Christian. But then he has a moment where then you're like, oh, maybe he started doing that once Qui-Gon was gone,
Yeah.
Once he became a Force ghost. But yeah, I mean, I liked a lot of the ambiguity of the whole movie and everything of like, did they really give up their faith or did they just kind of do what they needed to survive to,
well, and that's what's interesting because part of it is survival, right? Like Kichiro, it always was to survive.
Yeah.
But then Liam Neeson and Andrew Garfield, like the day that he abandons the faith, even Liam Neeson's like, look, you can save all these people. And like, that is like the thing that finally breaks him, right? And part of it is the voice he hears, right? Mm-hmm. But it is like, right, it's a chance for him to be a savior to people and say, hey, their suffering isn't needed and I can relieve them of it. And, as much as like, it's flawed logic because, right, it's not God is inflicting punishment on them. It's a shogun. A shogun has said, hey, we're doing the torture and we're telling you that we'll only stop the torture if you do this thing, you know? So that's another, like, it's like, okay, obviously none of this torture needs to happen. This is your choice to do it, but you're saying it's on me, right? Anyway, so he finally does, like, let that go. But, right, that's also part of him relating to the savior, you know?
Yeah.
Of being a savior in that way. So I don't know, really interesting. I think Martin Scorsese said the movie is about the necessity of belief fighting the voice of experience, you know? So it's like he's going through all these difficult things, and then he ends up having to be like an ambassador against Christianity, but he still has, you know, his belief fighting against those things that he has to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting. I thought just like, the analogies of they make of like, well, look, Buddhism works here, but your thing, which is also interesting, right? Because Buddhism came over from elsewhere in Asia, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. So that's just kind of interesting too, because I think Shinto is like the OG Japanese religion, right? Like, I don't know. So
yeah,
I just like the whole, India, you know, so nothing grows in a swamp thing was interesting. And lastly, what a great way to get a family. Someone dies or is executed, and they're like, hey, just slide right into that. I mean, hey, it's a good way to, I think it's a good system. I know a lot of single people. When someone dies or is murdered by the state or put in prison, I think you should have like a little lottery and be like, hey, you get, or like maybe like a Hinge, like a dating app where it's like, my husband was murdered, and you get a swipe on a few people and find a good match to slide in and take his spot, you know?
Cody,
I just love that. They're like, hey, and it's not even that too. It's like, you can have his wife, you can have his kids, you can have his estate. Also, you get his name. So that's like, it's everything.
Let me tell you something,
here's
Cody.
His underwear, here's his name. This is you now.
You and the Japanese Bureau of Getting Busy or whatever they're called, you know, I feel like it's a match made in heaven, you know, like they really, I recently got what is obviously like a bot post from them about they're trying to import people now. These people, they're so like where it's like a whole Instagram account that just got thrown up to me about like dating in Japan. And I'm like, first off, Japan and Instagram, I'm married, sir. And I'm not going to move to Japan, especially since the meme that you first showed me was how much it sucks to date in Japan.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They do these things where they're trying to get all these young people together. So Japanese person that's probably still around, hopefully, start getting busy because, you know, there's not enough Japanese people. And, you know,
That's my other favorite phrasing in this movie when he's like, yeah, Liam Neeson's out here living as a Japanese. It's like, is that how we say that? Living as a Japanese man or no? Just Japanese. All right, great. Sure. Sounds wrong, but I guess you said it 3 times in a row, so now it sounds right in my brain.
Cody,
right,
as you said earlier, you served a mission. You knew some people who spent 2 years in another country as a teenager, you know?
Yeah.
That now claim to be that ethnicity. So you know how it is. You know how it is with these missionaries.
I mean, if the good people of Montreal can claim to be French, can identify as French, then why can't I identify as a Japanese, you know? Sorry, I need you to take your shoes off. I am living as a Japanese.
Yeah.
Wash the doors. They're paper.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real.
Shave the top of your head. It makes I had to look this up. It makes wearing a helmet more comfy and snug. It's like, what? Because and I don't know why it took me 30 years to Google this, but I was like, why do they shave the top of their head? Anyway, so I looked it up. It's a thing for armor, so the armor sits better and is more comfortable. And then it just became a status symbol, which that's always how it goes, you know?
I mean, because you'd shave it if you were like a samurai doing the full gear, and then it became a thing I shave it, but it's like, you've never worn armor, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's like the people that buy the military gear, but the stolen valor thing. All right.
Oh, so stolen valor. It's
there's one trivia we didn't get to that I just gotta throw at you, and you mentioned it. You mentioned it, but I wanna go full circle on it. Okay. So Daniel Day-Lewis was supposed to be in this movie.
Yes.
He was supposed to be in it. Obviously, it took a long time to get, so he did not do this movie. Liam Neeson slid in. Little did you know, Liam Neeson was supposed to play Abraham Lincoln in the 2012 film Lincoln by Spielberg. And instead, Daniel Day-Lewis slunk into that role. So there you go. They did a little tradesies on a couple movies.
I have two things about this. One,
do it.
I want the movie where Liam Neeson plays Lincoln but doesn't have an American accent.
Yeah, it's so just like this. It's like, we're all talking in the wrong accent anyway. We might as well just have you do your native one.
Irish Lincoln. Also, I like to imagine that Scorsese approached him. He's like, I know this is going to take 30 years. But Daniel, we both know you need enough time to become a Jesuit priest, move to Japan, renounce your religion, and write some anti-Christianity literature to get into the role. Because Daniel Day-Lewis is a psychopath who would do something like that. He'd be like, I studied as a Jesuit priest for 13 years.
Did you see that Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield went to a Jesuit monastery or retreat thing for a week? Like a silent Jesuit monastery that they went to, and
I didn't see that. I wondered if they did.
Yeah, they were there in silence for a whole week to kind of get an idea of the Jesuit deal and the faith.
They were spitting full Latin phrases,
And Andrew Garfield also, he played a Mormon police officer in that one from a year or two back too. So he did the Jesuit thing. He's done the Mormon thing. He's making his rounds.
Mormon's the worst. Am I right?
You just need to put him in as a Buddha in a movie, and then it'll be that'll be good.
I don't think so. I think maybe not. All right, which one did he play the worst? Was it Tick Tick Boom? The Eyes of Tammy Faye? Oh, that doesn't help me.
Just came out a year or two ago. It's the
Under the Banner of Heaven.
That's the one.
Oh, Detective Jeb Pyre. Oh, look at him. Oh, they did the... I am offended by his character look, by the way.
You're not the only one. My my cousin was telling me about it because she had seen it, and she was a member of the church and isn't doing the church thing anymore. But she was like, yeah, a lot of it was somewhat accurate. She's like, it's probably the dialogue's probably 60% accurate, You're like, oh, it's not too bad.
That's my favorite.
I mean, it's not great, but it's not too bad. But she was telling me some of the phrasings, and I was like, man, they really almost did their homework. It's they've got the right words, but boy, howdy, does nobody, would nobody phrase it like that.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine for 1 second here? All right, no, let's back it up for a second. Because it's Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver. They went to a Jesuit monastery for a month or whatever. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine an actor rolling up to the MTC in Provo, Utah? I'm studying for a role.
Dude, oh my goodness.
Here's my question to you, Cody.
That would be so
Do they let them in? Do they let them in?
No, because the sexual tension, the sexual frenzy they're going to throw the MTC into is just, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for everyone involved, Okay, let me go on a quick rant about Martin Scorsese.
Okay.
Because he's not my favorite director, but he's a legendary director, and he's obviously he's good. He's done some really good stuff. I haven't seen all his stuff, but I've seen a good, 8 or 9 of his movies at this point, and let me tell you how they go. And this is especially true, I think, of the ones that have come out in the last 10, 12, 15 years. They're all like this. They're so brutal. They're so long. And sometimes by the end of it, you're like, why'd you make me do that? Why'd you make me sit through this movie? What was the point of it? And it's true of several of his films. Here's my biggest problem with Scorsese is that he does not know how to be brief about anything. And the later he gets in his career, the longer these movies get. And they are a ride, they go for a long while. This one's interesting, but did he have to make it so? It's about it. He just drags it out. He's like, hey, these people are in a bad spot, or this person is a bad person. let's watch it all play out for 4 hours. Like, hold on, 4 hours? She's like, yes, 4 hours, right? Obviously, this movie isn't 4 hours long. It's 2.5 hours. But it's a rough one. A lot of his movies are about like, oh, this is a flawed character, right? And so you see kind of the fun roller coaster of I'm getting away with it. And then the last 2 hours of the movie is like, anyway, here's a lot of consequences for 2 hours, you know? It's just weird. No one else does it quite like him, you know? Because even like you talked about people not like understanding his work always, right? You know, Wolf of Wall Street, it's not about how it's cool to be a stockbroker, but it does try to communicate how cool stockbrokers think they are when they embezzle people out of money, you know? So I don't remember where I was going with it, but I've seen several of his movies, and like The Irishman and Goodfellas and Killers of the Flower Moon. It's all like, I mean, they're so long, dude, and like it signals to a lot of problems in the world and everything. But boy, does he do it in the way that is like, I made it as long and grueling as I could. And in some ways, I respect it. In other ways, sometimes I want him to drop like a movie that's an hour and 40 minutes and pops on and off, you know? I will say, I've seen a lot of his movies. I still think, to this day, my favorite's Hugo. And it's the one family movie he did. And it's one of his highest rated movies as well. So, also, it's very long for a child's movie. But it's a good one. It's a family movie, and it's a goodie. So that's my thing on Martin Scorsese, you know? He does it long, he goes hard. I think that's why he did this movie. He's like, the Japanese went hard. What if I went hard, you know?
Well, Cody, I mean, it says there in that trivia that you love so much that he went to Japan and he read this book and he said, this needs to be a movie.
Sounds exactly like how what I've heard about Killers of the Flower Moon, too, which is the one that just came out he did. So he's like, I've been wanting to make this movie for 40 years. And you're like, dude, I don't know how you got someone to sign on to making this movie. And same with this one. This is a book that should not be a movie. You know what? Like, this should not be a Hollywood movie, but kudos to him for doing it, you know?
Did you happen to take a peek at the, you know, like the box office and the budget and all that? Like, is that something that you...
I know 3 people that have seen this movie. I have not checked out the box office or anything like that.
Oh, Cody. Oh, my dear sweet boy. I'm going to the IMDb just to try to get a second source on it. First off, you want to, by the way, they filmed it in Taiwan. I spotted that earlier because he talked to talked to like Ang Lee or something like that.
In China. He filmed it in China, you're saying?
No. Well, yeah. In China.
In China, yeah.
Yeah, not like fake big China, real China, you know?
Yeah.
Taiwan.
Exactly.
The one real China.
China, yeah.
Taiwan, yeah.
Yes, China.
Not the, you know, whatever they're doing over there in the mainland, you know?
Mm-hmm.
China sucks. Can we be real? The people, you're cool people. You annoy me sometimes. Cody, are you know, come here, Japan. Let's come together again for a second.
Hold up. Is China the new Japan? Did we flip the script?
I'm going to bond with Japan
circle?
right now, okay? I'm about to bond with Japan. I once had a phone call with a software developer in China fixing a problem where he congratulated himself for so long that the software broke again before he was done congratulating himself for fixing the problem.
Yeah.
And me and the other American on the phone call, actually, I said nothing. The other guy went, huh, that's weird. And then we just sat there while he just sweat and gave up. And then he threw it to the real Chinese in Taiwan to fix, probably. I don't know who ended up fixing it. All I know is it's a major industrial software platform that got a patch because of this guy. Woo.
Great work.
I know. High fives all around.
It's just interesting because like everything you said about Japan having no chill kind of applies to China now. As far as like the Chinese government, where they're like, you know, we're going to just... Yeah, so that's cool.
Anyway, the budget of the movie. You want to hazard a guess?
Budget? I mean, $40 million.
Oh, you fool! It's $46 million.
Oh,
estimated. I mean, as far as Wikipedia is concerned, 40 to 50. Yeah. As far as IMDb is concerned,
what's the 46. Box office?
You want to hazard a guess? You want to throw one out?
There's no way this thing made any money. This thing was depressing AF. I mean, did it make its money back? Or let's say $49 million.
Cody, I will remind you, this movie won an Oscar, right? Or was it nominated? It was nominated for an Oscar. It won 6 awards and got 57 different nominations. Just let that sink in. It was premiered to 400 Jesuit priests.
I mean, if you're charging them $10 a head, that's $4,000 right there.
Yeah. It made $23 million.
Yeah. Told you I knew 3 people that saw this movie. It is a good movie. I had to look. This made me so mad. So I had to look up the phrase at the end, because the end of the movie gives a little dedication. It says, for the Japanese Christians and their pastors ad majorem Dei gloriam, which is a different language. It is, what is it? Latin motto of the Society of Jesus, in
the
order
Jesuits.
of the Catholic Church.
Which would be the Jesuits, yeah.
Go. It means for the greater glory of God.
Yep.
So there you go. Yeah, I heard a lot of people kind of talk about how it's like an anti-whatever movie, like where there's religion or faith or whatever. But like the end of the movie is saying, hey, all you Japanese Christians and pastors out there, this is for the greater glory of God. So what's Martin Scorsese's deal, first of all? But second, that's cool. Yeah, there's like a whole thing. There's a phrase for the people in Japan and during this time called hidden Christians, and the tradition carried on for a couple hundred years. And in the 1857, they de-outlawed Christianity, and a lot of people were like, sweet, we're going to be part of the Catholic Church. And there's a lot of people that were like, nah, this underground hipster Christian thing we've been doing for 200 years actually suits us great. And so they do that, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I do remember seeing like some stuff about like how shocking the amount of actively practicing Christians, and I mean any non-officially sanctioned religion, whenever they were like, whatever, you can be whatever you want, was pretty shocking, like to the establishment, where they were like, oh, like even like government officials are like, oh yeah, no, I'm whatever religion, Yeah. It's like, okay, cool. So we didn't do this well at all. It's what I would have thought if I was them,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I think it's interesting. I at the end of the movie did not feel like this was an really not anti anything. I felt like it was just a realistic depiction of it, which one of the reasons, okay, I'll say one of the things I like about this movie is I feel like it is the only other place it feels like when you want to tell this kind of story, normally your options are limited to like, all right, we're going to tell the story from the apostles of Jesus, and like the early Christians in the Roman Empire, or like some groups of Protestants in Europe, or the Mormons. And this feels like a way more interesting option there to show like a very persecuted group and give like a realistic depiction of, what did these people have to go through for their faith and all that, which I think is, it's an interesting story. There's lots of very powerful movies that have been made. I'm sure he would have wanted this movie to be, like a Ben-Hur or any of those like 10 Commandments or the big old.
Yeah, but he didn't do any action scenes, so there's no shot, there's no chance.
And he didn't have shiny Charlton Heston. He had a shiny. His shirtless people were not
dirty
shiny.
And matte colored for the people, and no one was glistening and shiny. It's all foggy. There's no sunlight. I mean, come on.
If you don't have dedicated oil people on staff, it's not going to work.
Just a slippery man.
Let's do a remake. Let's do a remake. Roberta, what's his name? Rodriguez? Kevin?
Robert Rodriguez?
No. It is Rodriguez. That's the Andrew Garfield's character.
Oh, the character.
Recast him as, you guessed it, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
But then it turns into an action movie when he gets captured. He's like, no, it's a prison break movie now. I'm breaking out the prisoners. I'm going to get a samurai sword. I'm going to start fighting.
Well, it's got to be like they keep trying to kill him, but they can't because he's so muscular and so faithful.
Like a Samson thing, but
exactly. Let's put him in another wig. We all loved him. Garupe, keep him as Adam Driver, but big boy Adam Driver.
Garupe drowned. That was so sad.
It was very sad.
he pops in and he's like, no, no. And how about the translator guy being like, there's plenty of time to talk to him. And then he dies. It's like, you lied. I wanted to hear them talk to each other. I don't know. I like the movie. It is grueling to watch. It was really impressive. I thought the lighting was beautiful. The scenery is beautiful. It was a daylight kind of production. It was daylight or candlelight were kind of the two ways they used to light the movie. And was nominated for an Oscar. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I was going to say something else. Oh, it's too bad. It's a good one, but it is grueling. I mean, it's cool that Scorsese made this movie. Like, nobody touches this kind of stuff. It's not profitable, but it is fascinating from a faith perspective and from a history perspective. Like, really interesting story. I don't know. I mean, I felt it was a very spiritual movie. It was really interesting. I had a friend, well, Rob said this. Actually, Hollywood Rob was like, I just wish someone, he's talking about how, like, if someone wants to make a religious movie, they need to find a way to communicate, like, through cinema, what a spiritual experience is like. And it's hard to do, because, like, some people feel the Holy Spirit a certain way, but how do you communicate that on screen, And this movie has done as good of any I've seen in those moments where it is like when he sits there and like sees that portrait of Christ and hears its voice, you're like, this is about as good as anyone has done. And it's really cool that a director who has won Academy Awards and is like legendary has decided to do this story, So, I mean, in that regard, really interesting film. Boy, is it a tough watch that you buckle up. I'm surprised you made it through it, because did you know what you were getting into?
I mean, I had an idea because I've been wanting to watch this movie since it came out. And I initially thought it was one thing, kind of looked more into it, found out like what it actually was. And I still was interested, because I remember I enjoyed Lost City of Zed and like those kinds of slow plotting movies that aren't even like anything. They're just a realistic depiction of an event that happened in history, like you could have taken all of the explosions out of 1917 and just had it be like a slow, boring walk across no man's land. And I would have been like this,
Yeah. I did want to mention, I was really impressed, as grueling as it was to watch the torture scenes. It was really impressive the way they were able to show what they showed. Like, I mean, didn't they just pour hot water on those people because their skin turned red and like, like what? How they get some of these effects done,
I'm sure it was just hot water, right? Because it's like, you just do that and then you cut away, cut back, and you just have their skin red from the hot water, and then you put some blisters on them. I mean, in reality, that water is boiling.
They showed so many ways to torture people and so creative. But like going back to the spirituality thing, there was also like, right, the one guy who sings a hymn while he's being drowned on a cross in the ocean, and like everyone watching, it's like, it was heart-wrenching, but also like spiritual in its own way. Like, I don't know, people who choose to like embrace their faith in those moments, it's a powerful thing, and good for them for doing it.
I mean, that's part of like my appreciation for it, right? Is that, like you're saying, it's like, oh, that's so cool. But I feel like so often that happens, but it's like, somebody, they do it and it's like, oh, and then everything's fine. But it's like, no, this was, people really got crucified at high tide and would
like
sing
their
a hymn.
Family and friends like watched and also had to deal with that trauma after, like we sit here and watch all these Hollywood stylized movies and it's violence, but it's, we know that it's fake and it's for kicks and giggles, but like seeing real torture, real violence in person is like, it's harrowing, it's a terrible thing it's a terrible burden to carry. And I think the movie treats it with a lot of respect, and, it was really interesting to see people deal with that.
Yeah. And like, especially because like this time period is, in the brutal period of the beginning of that Edo period. Because like I said, like the Edo period is kind of known at its height as like a very peaceful, a lot of focus on arts and culture and all that. But this is like when they're transitioning into this super isolationist where it's like, oh, well, some people kind of got during
the
that
Shogun
period.
warfare stuff is just crazy. Like, I don't know. Japan's come a long way. It's a very different
But
place
you know what
now.
they
But
still got? You know what? That emperor though, he's still kicking. Okay, he's in here. He's got it going. Let's, they don't talk about him, but that guy, talk about a guy who knows how to keep his job. That whole line.
they still have an emperor.
Yeah, dude.
I thought they were. I thought Imperial
No, sir.
Japan was like
He's there.
deuced out.
Nope, he's
What does
still
he do?
there. He's the head of the country. I mean, he's just like the he's just like King Charles or any real monarch nowadays for the most part.
When are we gonna topple these people? You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe it's just like the bleeding American heart of mine, but like, let's topple the monarchy. Let's just do it.
I do. So here's where I'll come in. I mean, this is way later, but I mean, there was a desire after World War II, obviously America going in, let's be real, kicking their teeth in. And like, we're going to remove the emperor. And Japan was like, but we'll be sad if you do. And then the people that make the decisions at the time were like, all right, we'll let you keep your emperor, but he's got to give up like the few remaining powers he's got. So I think now he's basically, he's like any other guy, right? But I thought the same thing. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Yeah. I was like, oh, he went gone after World War II. And he's like, no, sir, he's still there.
Wild. Well, this one goes out to Emperor Japan guy,
Look, I'll look up his name while you start wrapping it up. We gotta give him the respect.
We've got to do some ratings, and we've got to boot up the device, So that's what we have to do. This is a tough movie to rate for me because I think there's a lot of good in it. I don't think it's quite a perfect film, but I think it's a very unique film. And while I do like it, it is grueling. So, in the math of my head of how good a movie is versus how much I liked it, I'm struggling to know what to rate this one. I'm going to need to hear what you're going to give it, That's what I need.
First, just shout out to Emperor Naruhito. Nailed it.
All right.
And Empress Masako.
There's not a girl one, too. Oh,
I mean, it's his wife.
There's two.
Yeah, there's two of them.
A dyad. Tyler, what you going to rate this movie?
I've been going back and forth, right? I think this is a beautiful movie. I like historical movies. I think this is a movie that I'm not surprised that it didn't make its money back. I'm kind of shocked it got made for the budget it did. Yeah. I think I'm going to go an A-, where I think it's a really well done movie. It's just rough, Yeah,
I'm right around there too. I don't know. I really enjoyed the theology of it more. It was so grueling though. What are we gonna do here? I'll give it a B+. I'll give it a B+. It is very good, but boy howdy, are you in for a ride and a half?
Oh yeah, I mean, This isn't something
my
to
son
bust
liked
out at
it.
the movie
He watched the last hour of it. He seemed to enjoy it. I mean, I don't think he speaks English or watched much of it, but like for a movie to roll around on the floor to as a soundtrack, he liked it.
Tiffany came in for the last 20 minutes and she's like, and you thought I wouldn't like it. I was like, yeah, but you missed a whole movie and a half.
30 seconds. It like starts with them like, all right, we're going to pour some hot water on these people.
Tiffany's also a crazy person. I was like, they're going to burn some people. She was going to do laundry and I was like, they're going to burn some people alive. Don't you want to see that? She was like, no. And then turns out she did. So I don't know what she wants from me now,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What does the device have going for us? Are you ready?
I mean, it's right here. I got it. Got it. Are you ready? I'm going to divine the film. The French Connection.
Oh, another old one. This is the one you're going to like because it's old.
Stop picking movies that are in black and white and in other languages, Cody.
I mean, you don't know. You don't know what it is. I don't even know what it is. I just know people know what it is.
Can I read the little blurb on IMDb as I normally do? A pair of NYPD detectives in the Narcotics Bureau stumble upon a heroin smuggling ring based in Marseille. But stopping them and capturing their leaders proves an elusive goal. Here's the thing. If this place existed around Baston, which is, the rough region of the country where I live, this would be merciless. But it is Marcellus, I think.
Marcellus Wallace?
Yeah, probably.
Cool.
See, when I do it, it's a city in France, so it's like Marseille, right? And it's Cody, just tell me. Oh, there is a place in Boston. So dumb, Cody. You thought it wasn't real, but it's real. Thought it wasn't a real place, and now you're excited to see it. It's a restaurant in New York. It looks like, I don't know.
Well, it's gonna be a good one. I'm sure you'll love it.
Yeah.
Tyler, just want to say thanks. Thanks to everyone who listens. Thanks to everyone who follows us, subscribes us, worships us, and until next time, watch movies
and have opinions.
Don't worship us. That's the point. You don't do it. But
don't.
Because we're telling you not to, if I've learned anything from today, it's that someone's going to make that religion. Don't do it. Don't do it. But when you do it, just be nice about it.
When you do it,
I want persecuting.
I want my statue bigger than the big one in China. That's Buddha. I want bigger.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's not much better than seeing a big Buddha. Like the big ones,
But it's not big Buddha. It's skinny Buddha, but he's big.
But he's big.
Very heavy.
As long as he's big, I don't mind.
He's too big.
Big.
But I want bigger. I want to be behind him, like with my arms out, like I'm about to get him.
Oh no! How big?
But you're like, is he gonna hug him? Is he gonna love him? What's he gonna do?
They've got a great one in Nelson Atkins. It's like, it's a good 20 feet tall, probably.
Oh, you just
good. And I get it, right? I'm sure yours is bigger, but I'm just saying I've seen a big one and I was like, this is pretty good. It's pretty cool.
Look, I'm trying to look up the biggest one. Oh, see, it's tallest statue is over 4 kilometers from the whatever temple. It doesn't say how big it is. It's not even the one.
How far it is from a place.
It's not. It's too much. Never mind. It may
not
like
even
be
this is
Buddha
a record we can break. If no one's out here bragging about it, I think we got this in the bag.
What if it's not Buddha, the statue that I'm thinking of? Here's the thing. There's big Buddha statues. Just, make me a bigger one. I'm already fat. Just roll with that,
Yeah, but what if they make you skinny in the religion?
So all my big statues are big fat me, and all the little ones in the restaurants, all the barbecue restaurants. That's what I want to be. All the barbecue restaurants, they're skinny me.
Yeah, there you go. But can you have a waving arm like the Lucky
Cat? All right,
Cat?
This is going as long as another.
Can you have the waving arm like the Lucky Cat, though? You know that one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, all right. Get out of here.
It's another podcast.
Get out of here.